What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Almost There, a Twisted Tale novel audiobook session here on Disney Magic Zach. I am, of course, your host, Zach, and welcome back. If you are new here and you are ready and you've not yet caught up, be sure to go and check out the playlist for, the rest of what's happening previously to this chapter. But we are on chapter 14, and things are getting interesting. Naveen is wanting to ask Tiana out on a date. Let's see where it goes. Let's dive in. Given the current tranquility of the empty dining room, one would never believe that less than an hour earlier this place had been packed to the gills with a boisterous crowd and rousing jazz music. Tiana shoved away the guilt that tried to creep in at the notion of her sitting here doing nothing. She'd worked hard tonight. They all had. She deserved to relax for a spell, to steal just a few minutes and quietly celebrate yet another successful night at T&J's supper club. If she was being honest, she also needed a minute to ruminate over that other thing that had happened about an hour ago. She was still reeling from Charlotte's outlandish suggestion that Tiana and Naveen meet up for Cafe Au Lau the next day. Tiana reminded her that they already had plans to go shopping, and then she raced back to the kitchen. What was Lottie thinking? Although, to be fair, Charlotte had no way of knowing that the turmoil Tiana endured whenever she was near Naveen. None of her friends knew what she'd sacrificed in order to keep them all safe. Still, her best friend, who had known her for all her life, should have known better than to propose such a preposterous idea, and in front of Naveen no less. With a sigh, Tiana pushed up from her seat. This was enough relaxing for the week. She went around to all the tables and wiped them down with an old dishcloth. Using as much muscle as she could muster, she scrubbed at a particularly stubborn stain on the table next to Mr. LeBus, then picked up a tray stacked with dirty dishes and hauled it into the kitchen. She walked past one of the paintings that Miss Rose had given her and stopped short. The portrait, depicting a rainy evening in the French Quarter, was one of her favourites of those that hung in the restaurant, but something seemed off. Tiana tilted her head to the side, trying to figure out exactly what bothered her. She peered more closely and blinked several times. She was sure that the flowers hanging along the wrought iron balcony had been more vibrant, the same with the deep red brick of the building. Now they seemed obscured by the rain. Was the mist in the painting thicker? Don't be ridiculous, Tiana murmured. That thickening fog outside must have been fog in her brain. Or maybe it was just that she was bone tired after the night she'd had and wasn't thinking clearly. She continued to the kitchen, carting the last of the dirty dishes with her. She backed her way through the swinging door. When she turned, she yelped in surprise. Annie May! Tiana nearly dropped the tray. My goodness, you scared me. What are you still doing here? Mr. James made me promise not to leave you here by yourself, Annie May answered. I should have known. Tiana rolled her eyes. And to think she'd felt such a sense of triumph after convincing Danny to go home early. Well, let's get these cleaned up so that we can both get out of here. She and Annie May made quick work of the dishes and had the kitchen looking spotless in no time. Of course it would be a mess again the next night, but that was how things worked in the restaurant business. She wouldn't have had it any other way. Thanks for the help, Tiana said as she followed Annie May out of the back door that led to the alley behind the restaurant. She snapped her fingers. I forgot Mama's dessert, she said, remembering the bread pudding she'd promised to bring home. Her mother had left early with a headache, probably from all that dancing. I'll wait for you, Annie May said. No, you go on home, Tiana said. I'll see you tomorrow. She went back inside and found the thick wedge of a bread pudding wrapped in tinfoil, sitting where she'd left it near the coffee percolator. She slid it into her bag and looked over the kitchen one last time to make sure it was all in order. Letting out a deep breath, she tried to make the stress of the night dissipate. This is all yours and Daddy's, and no one could take it from her. Tiana walked back into the alley and gasped, struck by how thick the fog had become in just a few minutes. She could barely see a foot in front of her. My goodness, she whispered. She kept the alley behind her restaurant clear of clutter, but she still tiptoed about, making sure she didn't trip over anything she couldn't see. Despite it still being February, a sultry heat lingered in the air, making the night warm and damp. Tiana hefted her bag more securely onto her shoulder and took off for the Rampart streetcar line. If she didn't make it on time for the last ride to the Ninth Ward, she would find herself walking home. At least the walk from Tremere was shorter than if she'd bought that old sugar mill from the Fenner brothers. In fact, maybe it was a blessing the estate agents had sold it to someone else. Yeah, you keep telling yourself that, Tiana said with a huff. You always go around talking to yourself? A streak of cold rushed through Tiana's veins. She took a step back. Who's there? She called. A low, distinct laugh came from just over her shoulder. Tiana quickly turned. She blinked twice as the thick fog parted and the shadow man appeared. "Oh, hello there, Tiana," he greeted, in that deceptively cordial voice of his. "Fine night out, isn't it?" She straightened her shoulders, refusing to show an ounce of fear. "What can I do for you, Mr. Facilier?" "Why so formal? We're all friends at this point, aren't we?" "And it's Dr. Facilier." "We are not friends, Doctor. The bottle of the potion I got from you this morning should last for at least 2 weeks, so we have no further dealings with each other until after Mardi Gras." Tiana hefted her bag higher on her shoulder and began to walk past him. "Now, if you'll excuse me, it's late and I need to get to the streetcar stop. I have another long and busy day ahead of me tomorrow." "I can imagine," he said, stepping in front of her and blocking her path. "This sort of restaurant of yours is all anyone can talk about." He looked towards the building. "It's nice." He didn't sound impressed. "Of course, the one I offered you would make this look like a shabby shack in comparison." Tiana stuck her chin in the air, ready to defend her restaurant, but spoke again before she could. "Your guests don't seem to mind, so why should I?" he said with a casual shrug of his bony shoulders. "It appears your food makes up for the lack of ambience, shall we say. The food is the most important thing at a restaurant, and yes, my guests love the dishes Daddy and I prepare here. That's all that matters." "Yes, it is," he said. "I'm particularly interested in that etouffee you cooked tonight for Mr. Eli LeBoeuf." Tiana's eyes shot to his. "How do you know that I served Mr. LeBoeuf etouffee?" A wicked smile curved up the corner of his mouth. Tiana suddenly called the stranger who had stalked past her, nearly knocking her over. "You were here tonight," Tiana said in an accusatory tone. Facilier peered down at his fingernails, then buffed them on his shoulder. "I may have stepped inside for a moment. I wanted to see what all the buzz was about." Tiana narrowed her eyes at him. She didn't trust this one as far as she could throw him. "I need to get going," she repeated. She tried to move past, but this time he stopped her with his cane, shoving the long stick out in front of her. "Not so fast," Facilier said. "I have a proposition for you. Call it an amendment to our original arrangement." Tiana shook her head. "No, I'm fine with how things are now. I'm not making any more deals with you." He moved in close, his voice growing more sinister. "Look, girlie, you got off easy with that first deal. If you want things to continue as they are, you'd better listen to what I have to say. It would be a shame if there was a horrible accident at this restaurant you've opened, but we all know how quickly fires start, don't we?" Tiana gasped. "You wouldn't." He tilted his head to the side. "Now that I think about it, it would be far worse for you if something were to happen to that dear father of yours, or your mother." Dread sliced through Tiana like a knife through an onion. "You keep my family out of this," she hissed. "That was part of the deal." "Things change," Facilier shrugged. "You of all people should understand transformations." He reached inside his jacket and drew out a vial similar to the one she got from him earlier today, but bigger. "You can still avoid harm coming to your family. All you have to do is add this potion to all of your food from now on. It's simple, Tiana." "But why?" she asked. "Everything has been going just fine with me adding the potion to the gumbo. What difference will it make putting it in everything?" "Enough," he snarled. Tiana flinched at his harshness, then cursed herself for showing even a hint of fear. She had learned over the course of this year that the best way to handle Dr. Facilier was to show that he couldn't intimidate her. "My question is legitimate," she countered. "What's the point of putting this potion in all of my dishes? You said I had to put it in Daddy's gumbo because that's the dish he's known for. I've cautioned you before about questioning my friends on the other side. Ask yourself, Tiana, is it worth risking Daddy's life when you just got him back? Is it worth your prince's life when all you have to do is what you've been doing all this time? Why must you make things so difficult?" "Because I don't trust you," Tiana said. "I'm never going to do just do something simply because you asked, Dr. Facilier." He grabbed her wrist and turned her hand palm up. He slapped the vial into the centre of her palm. "Every single dish, Tiana." She threw the vial directly at his face. He snatched it as if he had been expecting her to do just that. "I don't have to do anything," Tiana said. "I held up my end of the bargain. You hold up yours." She knocked his cane out of the way and brushed him past. She moved like her feet were on fire, refusing to look over her shoulder to see if he was following her. Her entire body trembled as she ran on shaking legs for the streetcar stop. Tiana could hear the bells jingling, indicating its arrival. She was still yards away from the stop. "Hold on there," she shouted, frantically waving her hands even though the conductor wouldn't be able to see her through the thick fog. "Please, don't leave." She reached the corner of Ursulines and South Rampart and looked both ways through the haze before stepping into the street. The moment her foot hit the roadway, the headlights of the Model T blasted through the fog. Tiana yelped, jumping back onto the curb. She slapped her hand over her erratically beating heart. "Goodness," she whispered. She looked again for her vehicles, then crossed the street, grateful that the streetcar was still at the stop. Tiana climbed aboard and paid her fare, then made her way to the back of the streetcar. She collapsed onto her seat and covered her face with her hands. What was she going to do? Could Facilier really hurt her parents? Or Naveen? Of course he could. The man had turned both her and Naveen into frogs. He could do whatever he wanted to do with that strange power he wielded. She never should have made that deal with him. She knew better than to get involved with the likes of the Shadow Man. But if you hadn't, Naveen wouldn't be human, and Daddy wouldn't be here. Once she reached the stop, Tiana alighted from the streetcar. She could barely see her hand in front of her face. The relentlessness of this fog took her breath away. She travelled this route so often she could probably have made it home with her eyes closed, but it was still unnerving not being able to see where she was going, not know if anyone was out here with her. Don't be ridiculous, Tiana whispered. This was Facilier's fault. Her run-in with him had her on edge, causing her heartbeat to escalate and tendrils of anxiety to cascade down her spine. But she was in her own neighbourhood now. She didn't have anything to worry about, right? Taking a deep breath, Tiana couldn't help running the rest of the way.